All right, welcome everyone. This is our third group together having book discussion, but we started book 2, book 3, and now we're doing book 1. So we are doing chapter 1 today on Through the Mist. And we came up with a kind of a nice icebreaker topic for today, just some fun questions to go with. Nothing too heavy. And then we'll see how we go with the conversation, and hopefully we'll get a chance to offer some question at the end and try to practice receiving some answers. We'll see if we are accurate. We'll do our best, and I get more clues from how Afar lived his life on Earth. And also I've invited Afar. I'm going through some tough time right now, so I've invited Afar to basically come in and take over the group. I'm basically saying, could you come run the group today? So some good stuff could happen today. I've basically kind of also asked, I'm like, while we're reading this part, it'd be so nice to feel what Afar was going through. It's almost like we could kind of like watch the movie. You know, if we have that level of sensitivity, maybe we could even kind of get this, like, as we're living it through him. Maybe we can receive those kind of sensations or information. That'll be kind of fun. Make it more visceral. We'll see. Those are my fantasy wishes. Like, oh, it would be so fun if that could happen. But let's see what happens today. So in this chapter, Afar starts off with how he was perceived by people. He said people call him a misanthrope, which means somebody who don't like people. And he kind of confessed, I would call it. He kind of just came out and said that, yeah, he didn't like how things were done, or a whole bunch of other examples of some things that he experienced that probably end up helping him later. But life on Earth was not fun for him, and he also didn't quite wanted to participate in the way it was set up. And then he passed away, like boom, just like that, he's passed. And that's the first chapter. So I figured that for the first question, we could discuss going back through the chapter. Considering that he passed pretty close to second sphere, which is like a very good condition, and was then met by one celestial spirit after another who kept showing him the way, to the point where he ended up, I would say, not in one way God, but in sixth sphere in 30 years. The gate of heaven is supposed to be the sixth sphere, if I am correct. So what qualities did he have that he fostered? What qualities did he develop that, even though he wasn't a popular person and didn't quite participate in life the way we expected to, he ended up being in a very good condition and ended up attracting some wonderful teachers. So what is it, as we read through the chapter, what can we pick up? So I call it a treasure hunt, but let's see who wants to start. Judith.
Hi. You wanted me to, or us to pick the page too that we got the information from?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on page 5, what I noticed was that line where he says he neither received nor extended to any member of the household any sympathy. No one ever spoke to me of my mother. She was gone and I was left alone. Yeah. And what I noticed was that it's like his family didn't seem very, very close, and maybe they were shut down emotionally, but he doesn't get angry at them for that. He doesn't have bitterness about it.
Right.
He just kind of goes off on his own, and he seeks the companionship through other books, he says.
Books. Yeah.
Yeah. So despite the fact that he had kind of this, I don't know how troubled his childhood was. I know he was upset about the death of his mother. But he just developed this natural curiosity towards learning spiritual truths.
Yeah.
And he ended up just kind of stumbling across the information that moved him. It was like he I guess even as a child, had a pure desire and found information that was helpful to him.
Right.
Despite of what the rest of the planet or the people that he knew felt and what he was learning in church. And he saw this example. I thought that was interesting.
Okay, good one. Yeah, those are definitely really good qualities that he doesn't seem to be holding on to the bitterness of how much he was not included in the family. And also he found books, and the books became an avenue. Yeah. Thank you. Selena.
I really liked his strong sense of justice.
Okay.
And I feel like he read the Bible and based it on what Jesus said and what the church, what people were telling him about justice just didn't make sense to him. That I could never understand the righteousness of poverty here and damnation there. Like he just, that made no sense to him. He followed more like how Jesus described what gets you to heaven, not what the church kept telling him. And empathy, like his ability to, these are both on page 11, to have like these people he's helping have to work long hours with scarcely one suit to wear, indicated by the smell, vulgar habits, loud voice song, empathy, even though being around them wasn't pleasant. Like, have you ever been around a street person?
Yes.
Anybody?
I worked in the street,
Yeah, they smell
inside.
and their language is bad and it can be kind of offensive. Like you have to really have some love to want to be hanging around these people. Like they're not just all going to fall at your feet, and some of them would probably be angry at him because he's some rich guy coming to, he'd have to overcome that, natural resistance they'd have to some do-gooder coming along, I would think.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a lot of empathy and compassion to do what he was doing. And I think that that's one of the reasons he got to where he got to in he passed.
So how is it, like Judith had pointed out, that he had no sympathy from his family? He was left alone. Yes. And yet he has empathy.
How the heck did that happen? Isn't that amazing? I know.
Yeah.
Because you think, and actually when she said that, I felt this little pang of this tiny little baby. And he had a brother and sister, like nobody kind of felt that feeling of, oh, poor little baby, and wanted to mother them or him, like a sibling. Often siblings in that situation would do that. They would take on a little bit of a parenting role, at least in terms of love and protection. And he didn't even get that. Like, no, man. No, I don't know. So her looking after him in a sleep state, that's the only thing that really even makes sense to me, that he felt some love. I don't know.
And pretty sometimes amazing, the one thing that you didn't get, that you really felt how much it mattered, it can become the thing that you get good at.
Yeah, or you become
like I had a lot of cruelty and harshness, and yet I want to be as empathetic as I can. It matters to me. I value the quality of empathy from somebody else because I'm so thirsty for it from not having it as a child. So maybe that could have. But
to have the thirst for it, to know you want it, having recognized some of those things in myself, like to know you want it, that is also something that, how does that happen when no one has shown it to you or taught it to you? To know you want it, because there's some things that I have not known, that I have not even thought about wanting or cared about wanting, where other people would crave them.
That's right.
Like affection. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay. Virginia, or was it Jill? I don't know who, but Virginia, you're it.
I quite agree with what everybody has brought up. I really noticed that he had faith in God's goodness. He seemed to be, God was good. And I think that took him a long way. And he believed, and he did read the Bible, and then it did go to church sometimes. And so he was able to take the good things it seemed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
have this faith in that. And he had such an appreciation for sincerity and truth.
Yes.
Um,
I guess because he felt the pain when it wasn't there. He saw the hypocrisy in his caretakers and the priesthood, and it really bothered him.
yeah,
Like he didn't make excuses for it. Like he was upset.
I would think that I feel that he must have had some trust in the guidance that he was receiving,
Yeah.
spirit, because he wasn't receiving it from the physical world, because he was able to see beyond what was there and feel that how he was being guided, because he must have been to
Mhm.
in a good place that he was,
Yeah.
and to find the goodness in others to do that. There must have been some trust there in what he was receiving.
Yeah.
Whatever guidance
So
that. Yeah.
usually you influenced and you absorbed the demands of people around you as a child. So if he had anyone that was going to give him any attention, you would have healthily as a child addiction for approval, addiction for attention, addiction for sympathy, and you would do what they want. You would take on their beliefs just to appease them. But his being ignored completely ended up being such a positive because he couldn't absorb any negative qualities, too many negative qualities. And then on top of it, he read. And then in that silence, because he's alone, I'm sure it must have been easier for his guides to impress just because there was so much silence.
Yeah, that's quite a wonderful thing that he did not have a lot of addictions when he passed, considering how his life went on, what kind of life he had, and how he was raised. So I'm quite impressed by that. I think
Yeah. The fact that he let himself feel the misery and the sadness, because usually addictions are about getting away from those feelings, but he experienced those feelings of depression and loneliness and sadness, and so he was probably processing all those emotions, so he didn't need addictions. That's kind of my logical sequence, how that must have worked. Yeah, but then again, like there's a choice being made, so you're kind of like, what quality did he have there? Yeah, good one, thank you. And Joe.
To also further on in that as well, I was struck by how he really trusted two things: his intuition and God.
Right.
And I think being left alone was the blessing, was the true sort of nobody was there to project on him. Nobody was there to say you have to be this way. Nobody was there to say that you have to believe these things and this and that.
Yeah.
And by the time he became an adult, or what they would consider an adult, these beliefs that for the truth, this like this thirst for quenching was just so settled in him that he didn't look anywhere else. And I believe that was built up by his observation. So he mentions it quite a bit through like learning through observation kind of thing. And I saw the priest did this, and that was this, and that was this, and he learned, and he did the opposite. Like he learned, okay, I don't like this isn't right. I believe it's this way because of his the spirit influence that he had, his readings of the Bible, and I like how he put the plain teachings of the Bible, like to take out sort of the church of the time kind of thing. And he did say in one, see if I can quickly find it, I didn't write it down, but that that the plead to God to grant success to it. And for me, I took that, maybe I took it wrong, but I took it that when he did pray or when he did ask for assistance or anything like that, it was answered.
Is that what that quote mean? Can somebody double check? No.
Maybe I took that wrong, but
I think that was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Alexia.
I soon learned to hate
The
those
first
who did
page.
not hesitate. Sorry, go
On
ahead.
the first page, the end of the third paragraph, and I think it's referring to people who he feel, well, because for example, he says his soul shrinking from the appearance of deceit.
Yeah.
And he's basically, for me, he's has a discernment for knowing whether it's true or not. So this is like, for me, that feels like people seeking that, but that's not actually the truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That particular thing.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, observation, definitely. His observation, and also that I think that because he only adopted those teachings that made sense to him. It had to make sense. If it didn't make sense, the fancy language just didn't appeal to him.
Yeah. I was trying to find an answer to how he built up that radar to, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I came up with like the whole chapter was just really about that he had faith in his earth life.
Yeah.
And then because of that, and he had faith in himself and he had faith in God. So because of that, he was able to then question everything else. He was able to question his, I don't know what, but like his everything else, the church, his upbringing, his everybody else that was in front of him, he was able to question it. So I don't know if that allowed him to then develop over the years the ability to say, this is what is right and this is what's, I believe this and I don't believe that.
Yeah. Oh, like
I don't know
it's
if I'm explaining that right or not. But
I mean, it could be that he had faith, that's why he questioned, or that he questioned and therefore he developed faith in the right things.
Yeah.
So one leads to the other somehow. Thank you, Joe. Okay, Michaela.
I'm so excited to be all together. It's really great. Yeah. I've been really praying this last week and stimulated by these questions for sure. Like I really feel the support behind us, like really going into these questions and exploring a lot of things. But I've been praying to understand God's presence in my physical reality, because I feel it's lost so strongly, but I know it's there. So I've really been praying to see how present God is in my physical life. And I feel like with Fred, because he was given the freedom, because no one was trying to control him, he was able to experience that truth of God in his physical reality.
Right.
And so it was his curiosity and his freedom.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we could all have had that experience of recognizing how present God is. But because we were so loaded and constrained, we didn't even get to have the curiosity.
No.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I like that. Thank you. Okay. Other comments? Michael and then Alicia.
Yeah. God was a reality for him. He didn't come to he just said he trusted in the justice and the leniency of God. It's not that he came to understand God through going through the religious baby farm or through any teachings. God was like unquestioned reality. And he felt, he didn't feel God's conviction or judgment. He trusted that he could make his own honest failures in the effort to do God's will. He was, he had a feeling for what God's will was, and he
Yeah.
tried to follow that. That was a natural part of his nature.
And he was
Um,
willing to take the risk that if I end up being wrong, I'll take it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I suppose that would be, and then whatever emotions would come up, he would feel those.
Yeah.
Um,
So he took action, he took risks, because considering his life, he took a lot of risk, didn't he? Yeah. Okay, go ahead,
and
keep going, Michael.
he didn't feel like he would be slapped down.
By
And
God, yeah.
and when he saw things that didn't make sense to him, it sounds like there were not people to tell him that his understanding of God was wrong, but you
Yeah.
must believe the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with I imagine we all do. We have a feeling about things, but then we read the Bible and we see these mysteries and these miracles,
Yeah.
and we're told this is real, and you end up praying for the faith to believe that it becomes real, but it's not.
Yeah.
So the other thing that stood out to me was he loved poetry, and
Yeah.
poetry is. I just happened to hear an interview on the radio today of a young poet, and she said poetry has lyricism, and you find your authentic voice. You try to be authentic with it, and there's metaphor. So there's these qualities of the soul, and
Yeah.
poetry is a way to describe things that we have deep feelings and questions about, and he was
Okay.
drawn to that.
Okay.
So he was that nature of his soul, was that beauty of his soul was being developed.
So there's this theme of authenticity versus inauthenticity. Like he felt what was fake and he was very repelled by it, and then he was drawn to what was real. Sounds like there's this kind of this two-sidedness of a choice and a quality being developed. I have many times gone along with what was not authentic, but there was a community, so I could belong. I could be a part of it, or I could get other addictions met. So I was willing to overlook things. But he was able to, stay on that one thing. Things have to make sense. It has to be authentic. It has to be, I think it's that empathy. Like he could put himself in somebody else's shoes and I go, does that make sense? Well, it makes sense that Jesus would say that, but does it make sense that God would do this? Kind of like that empathy became an ability, which then you got to wonder, like the lack of empathy when he was alive, but then realizing that he was actually spending some beautiful time with a very empathic mother in his sleep state. So, yeah, good observation. Thank you, Michael. Alicia.
I'm not sure if I have anything to add now, but and also I missed a couple of little things, but I felt to at least maybe emphasize his compassion and empathy in the way he was working with the guys in the workhouse, and therefore his service to others.
Okay.
That he developed, and his willingness to share his experience by sharing the gospel, for example, he talks about.
Yeah.
He's willing to share that and sow seeds in doing that.
But
and
he was received well, though. He felt like
he was appreciated.
Received. He was appreciated. So there must have been something about the way he delivers it, because I'm sure there was no lack of priests trying to.
I feel like in the way he said about, as Jill mentioned, the plain talking is what he received from the Bible, that and his directness and candidness, that he was like that with them. It's like he could be an equal with them. In fact, I feel like that's one of the qualities that he developed, even though he's from a certain level of people,
middle class.
But I feel like he could bring himself to their level.
That's really cool.
Be equal with them, I feel.
Yeah, and people can feel that in you. Especially people who are living in hardship can feel that you are coming from a place of respect, that you see them as worthy as human beings. It's kind of like, how did he get there? How did I enter him? How did that happen? Like, But then again, because he was left alone so much, maybe God was able to personally be able to.
I feel like that's a huge part, like the way he says, he says in one part, I can't remember where it is, about the influence. And I feel all the way through underlying it is that he has this influence being impressed upon him.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is God and his guides. He may be just not labeling it as such.
Because we don't use that kind of language. Even now, we don't use that kind of language. So you don't have that concept. But then he went ahead and took action, like he took action based on it.
Yes, so that for me is another quality that he developed, his self-responsibility. And the way he said he relies on himself and trusts in God, basically.
Yeah.
But in a way, he's relying on God, but he's trusting in his ability to be able to work things out for himself.
Yeah. So a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I know this has been mentioned, but definitely his values, morals, and faith. It's like he held to the illusion. He had no charm in whatever it was. Like he was like, no, this is my value, this is my moral. I have faith with this. Like he was strong in his core about those things.
Yeah.
Whatever anybody else said, even if the whole world was against him, no, this is what he believes. And
he's already been rejected. So
yeah,
he's already been rejected, and you're kind of like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Reject me? I mean, been there, done that.
But I feel like he's also humble to the fact that, well, this is what's within me now, but I could change. But this is as far as I know at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judith.
Yeah, I agree with what Elisa said with him being so empathetic with these people and not viewing them as less than. But what I also noticed was that one line where it says, led by influence, that was to me nothing less than inspiration, reaching out to the people and speaking to those people. He obviously was, when he says inspiration, I think he obviously was listening to the voices of others in his head and being influenced by spirits. And because he was able to apparently talk to people and really give them the information they needed to help them.
Yeah.
It seemed like that. So.
Yeah. But he took action. He received inspiration and he took action.
Yeah, he didn't have any doubt either. He wasn't fearful. He didn't have any doubt.
Yeah.
Like how we get sometimes, we don't want to do anything because we start to get doubtful and unsure.
But I think he does. I think he's kind of like, this is the current interpretation of the Bible. This is the current interpretation of the good person. You're wealthy, you build good churches, the priest will bless you, and you're going to get all these privileges. Yeah, but I'm not feeling called to that. I feel like it's this other thing, and I'm gonna. So I feel like he's taking risk. He is seeing this other example. It is uncomfortable. There will be doubts, but he was like, even if it turns out wrong, I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's kind of speaking from that place of, I don't know yet, but I'm gonna go with this other feeling that makes sense to me.
It does make sense.
Yeah. Thank you. And Selena, you had mentioned something before we started that was like, if you want to speak to that. Selena, do you remember?
No.
You were speaking of convictions.
Yeah, he was solid in his convictions, which I think, if you've listened to Jesus talking about conscience, so it's not like if we really pay attention to our conscience, that we don't know. If we don't have a bunch of injury on us, then you see truth, because you have a conscience. It will teach you. So he has conscience. He has because what's underneath all this is why? Why did he go that way and not another way? Like, because often people who, like a child who's neglected, it's usually pretty bad emotionally for them. Yeah. So why? So just very interesting. And oh, and another thing, I don't know, I think my guide might have popped that in, and he was with his mother for 9 months.
Right.
So there is some openness there, maybe, that she was able to give him.
Right,
do that.
because because she developed in a certain way. She had certain qualities. But then I think that the sleep state experience
And that too,
has,
right? And maybe she was able to maintain that connection through the sleep state even better than if she had been alive, because of all the influences that were around him.
Yeah.
You know, so there's more continuity of love.
Yeah.
Because she was also under so much unloving pressure
yeah,
in
exactly.
that environment. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there's something to that. Huh. All right, thank you. Michaela?
I feel like just like listening to this example of Afra, it's an example of seeking validation from God. And because
Okay.
it's like, you know, we're all kind of like, why, how, like, and I can feel in my why, how, it's like, but doesn't that person's opinion really matter? And don't they have to like me? And how there's so much,
Yeah,
but he's seeking that from God. So it's a completely different way of being.
yes. I feel like the experience of that rejection that was so bad, just kind of turned him off. There's something hovering in my head. I can't put it into words yet, but so it's something about that level of rejection that give him a certain freedom in a back doorway. Alicia?
That's triggered me, and Selena saying about conviction is his desire for truth, because he had a loathing right in the beginning. It says he has a loathing and aversion and hatred for untruth.
Yeah.
And seemingly the way he says it, really for the facade in people as well.
Yes.
And for the duplicity and hypocrisy that people show. He's like, no way. So that feels like it's because he had a desire for what's actually the truth, and he had that connection with God to know that.
The observation, because you're observing.
Yeah.
And you have time, because you're being left alone, to assess what you're observing. Conclusion. Huh. And then also, I guess, being left alone to do whatever probably helped. I mean, I'm sure there were nannies that tried to stop him. And also his being the youngest, because his parent was up to here with the rebelling first and second children. But then undercurrent was that he was blamed for his mother's death. So there was always this hovering of blame. I think it's in here that I made some notes. It was maybe it's in the next chapter.
Yeah, I think it's another chapter.
It's in the next chapter.
I feel like also like if he was young and he had this curiosity for learning and exploring through books, poetry, and the Bible, which is a book, that's almost like, I feel like that would have been accepted as he's getting on, like I can leave him alone because he's doing something.
He's reading,
not knowing what's really going on, but
it's actually in page 5. On page 5, I'm just gonna share screen here. If you come towards the end here, with a naturally morbid mind, and I put a note, is that depression? Kind of like a bit of that depression here to work through. The shadow of some unknown wrong above me, which I feel like he could always feel he's being blamed. Like there's some kind of unwrong, I've done some kind of wrong here. There's this projection of blame. And the soul shrinking from the appearance of deceit, I soon learned to hate those who did not hesitate to lie in act and prayer, and then pleading with God to grant success to infamy. Okay, so you do something wrong, And then you're like, oh, I just have to go to God and say, I'm sorry, or whatever it is, that God is just going to let you get away with it. That's probably what that phrase means. So he did have this weight of, I feel like there's some kind of this secret. So I think another reason why he was searching truth so strongly was because people didn't tell him stuff. He could feel like, why am I feeling like I've done something wrong? There's this wrongness I'm being blamed for. But what is it? And who is my mother? What happened to her? Like, what was she like? Nobody's giving him facts. Nobody's giving him truth. So that developed his hunger even more. Maybe that's how that could have also influenced his qualities. Alicia's thinking very hard. What do you think?
I was just thinking, well, then it's almost like he had to rely on God because no one else is telling him. And I can even relate to that.
I like that. I like that. Okay, nobody else is telling you anything. And then, yeah, I like that. So he had to, I like that. So there's this kind of like this internal and upward reaching of, so is that the quality? That's a good quality. No, but I can't find truth outside. I have no choice than to go to God for these questions. Wow, that will really develop you in a nice, beautiful way, wouldn't it? Thank you. Okay. So how are we feeling about this question? We've talked it out. We've got some clues of his qualities.
Now I feel it's time to put it into action.
Which qualities do you guys feel like you could, or probably already are developing, that you feel like this chapter could inspire you to? What would that be? Alicia?
The first one that jumps out to me that I have written down is compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
For myself and others.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. What else? Virginia and then Michaela.
I feel like the trusting in God's goodness is important.
Yeah.
I don't fully have that yet. There's too much other shit that's been taken on, and other beliefs that I've had to let go of to start really embracing and believing that in God's goodness, and that even though I can't see the end of something, that if I'm being guided in a particular direction, to trust that is right.
Yeah.
Especially when it's loving. It's not an unloving request.
Well, that's basically how the chapter ended. The chapter ended with he had faith and believed what the guide told him. He knew to trust the guide. He had faith in truth. Like he was like, his guide said, wait, all will be explained. And he was like, okay, I'm content. I have no fear. It's like, wow, that took a lifetime to develop. And by the time he passed away, all the other stuff got removed. And what's left is that beautiful core. I'm content. I have no fear. Because somebody said, have no fear.
Yeah, that word hasn't been mentioned yet, is the fear, the lack of fear in proceeding as he did with that. It was his faith and trust in God was way stronger than any fear that he came across. And that is really, really, really important, really a big deal.
Thank you. Michaela?
His same, really. His curiosity and his faith.
Curiosity, yeah. Okay, thank you. Selena?
The fearlessness and how he just jumped to save that boy. Like he didn't, if he'd have hesitated even for a second, like, oh, how can I do this so I don't get hurt? Or how can I, how can I do this. Like he just jumped.
Yeah.
And obviously if he'd have thought about it even for a second, he may have realized that
But then
we
it took
could
a
not
whole
survive
lifetime
this, you
to
know,
develop the qualities and make you take that action.
yeah, that to be that fearless, to not hesitate, not even for a second, to do the right thing, completely fearless.
But then he saw it's the equality. He saw the other as him.
Yeah,
The kid is
it's
what's the
a
same as
human
he
that
is.
needed to be saved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was no thought, not even a logical thought of whether, can I do this? Is this logical? Can I succeed? Because some people will go, they're going to drown anyway. There's no point you jumping in.
Yeah.
To save them. You'll drown too. Like how
Yeah.
often do you hear that, right? Where people
Yeah.
let somebody die because there's just no point. We're both going to die. But he didn't hesitate. He did not hesitate. Yeah.
Thank you. Michael.
I guess a clarification. I'm asking for a clarification. When he was holding the boy, he made the point that the boy had no fear.
Yes.
But then Afrar had questions. And I
Yeah.
remember Jesus say, it seems like an injury of the soul is to ask for explanations when there's some fear.
Okay.
So I think he had some fear, but then he was patient and trusting. So he had a good balance.
Okay. Good point. I mean, the life he's had, why wouldn't you have fears to process and release? Like everything I work through starts with a layer of fear. Don't even question it anymore. Thank you. Alicia.
I feel first of all, the fear thing definitely for me too. I feel like he was in some fear himself, not in jumping out to save the boy. That was wonderfully an automatic. But I feel like when he was there, as Michael said, because he was questioning, what's going on? Where am I? But it's that, what was his name, Azariel, or I can't remember his name, the guy who met him to take the boy.
I don't think a name was given.
I think maybe it's given later. But he gave him assurance, and because of his assurance and the way he was, he had no fear. And I feel like that's the way that Afra was with the people in the workhouse. That one of the things he helped with was that they would have no fear, even if they were going to pass.
Yeah. So he was also rewarded with the same. While having, Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to question 2. I came up with, he asked the guide, but tell me, is this a delirium or is this a dream? No, you'll find you've been dreaming and now you are awake. How do you feel about this statement? Basically, the guide is saying, well, while you were alive, you were dreaming. Now you're awake. Of course, that got me all offended and huffy and all of that. How was that statement for you, that you are now in a dream and someday you'll be awake when you pass? What does that even mean, Michaela?
I feel like I got really angry, and I got angry at Adam and Eve, and there was this just frustration that it got taken away when it could be so close. And it took me on a journey though of wanting to understand self-responsibility and realizing that I have a strong victim mentality, so it's been beautiful to expand into wanting to understand and believing that God is loving and that it's okay that we don't know about that, and really wanting to know the truth about it.
I mean, if the feeling exists, you gotta let it out. So you gotta go through the process of processing the frustration in Adam and Eve, Amon and Aman, and then you can receive truth. Going, well, like Mary had said in one of the talks, who's to say you wouldn't have made that choice? I'm like, I totally would have made that choice. Are you kidding me? Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Somebody would have come along down 10 generations later making that choice. It was gonna happen. So thank you, Michaela. And Alicia.
Well, yeah, it could be a mirror of Michaela, really. Yeah, I wrote pissed off though. I was pissed off that I couldn't have met God and learned the laws from the very beginning. And I wasn't taught about the way to happiness, not knowing I could change everything with God. And slightly intellectually, I'm aware of some repentance for not having a desire to learn the way now.
Right.
Not to be self-responsible. So I can feel definitely a part of me is still wanting to, I want to stay a victim of it all.
Yeah.
But there's another little part of me that's excited every time I actually do wake up to something and feel guided, and my law of attraction shows that. That's like exciting at the same time. But most of me is still pissed off about it.
We have to start with the layer that's already there. The volume of emotion exists. It's got to come out of you. And only then there's room for somebody else to kind of correct it.
I can feel like there's a whole waterfall of grief underneath that.
Absolutely. We do have to grieve what we've lost because we didn't know.
Yeah, grief of loss. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Judith.
Yeah, I had more of an intellectual kind of response to the question. I just kind of thought, well, yeah, that makes sense because, we're here on Earth and we can manipulate it in any way we want. We can go down to the dark side and do addictive things, So I didn't really have an emotional reaction to it, but it did, like Michaela said, it kind of also brings you some hope because you realize, I can learn if I want to. If I want to deal with my stuff, I can certainly learn anything, actually.
Yeah. So how do you see that statement for all of you? I saw the statement as, while you're alive, that's your dreaming. Once you die, now you're awake. Or are you saying that they're saying, well, now that you're learning the truth about God's laws, now you're awake? Is that what is it? Is that
well, I'm just I'm in like la la land going la la la. I'm just going to go around and eat and drink and do things, that are not very, it's kind of like you're getting away from life. You're getting away from yourself. You're getting away from reality. And in the spirit world, you're there. There's no getting around it.
You can see it. Okay. So it's about the truth versus the ability to hide from truth.
Right.
That's how you see it. Okay. Got it. I felt like he was minimizing the struggle of life, like, oh, you were alive, that was the dream. Now that you're dead, now you can live. It's like, what? So that was where I went with it. Jill.
I had a full-on tantrum on it as well. It really kind of boiled down to I'm not 100% sure how to say this, but I'm upset about free will. That everybody has free will, and some people have chosen to pursue a dark side of their free will, and some haven't, and that God doesn't step in and fix it, right? And that bothers me. So that was the tantrum. And still have to go on it because I've been tantruming to God for the last week or so. So I think this just was sort of another layer, just a continuation of it. I feel like he's torturing us. That's where it came out. You
set me up to fail and then you punish me for it. I've had those things come out of me.
And that we were put on earth to be tortured. That's so, and if this really is the dream and then we get to live when we die, I don't want to ask the question, well, I don't want to dream anymore. But so that was my response.
Okay. Lots to feel, and as you feel, then you can receive truth about it. So thank you. Other perspective on that question? Okay, so number 3 was there's this paragraph of children are put to sleep on earth by the singing of nursery rhyme. The fabulous hero become historical characters in the mind of the little listeners until the realities of life dispel the illusion. So children of a larger growth, upon entering this life, find that even so have they been lulled to spiritual slumber by the fictions of the nurses of the soul. It is the awakening to the truth of this fact which makes this a land of surprises, as you will find it to be as you proceed. So what are the spiritual slumbers we have absorbed in our souls about spirit lives? And yes, we are blessed with truth, with knowledge. We get to read, we get to discuss. But then what emotion have we already received about spirit life? What are some of our slumbers? And I give an example of one of mine, which is like kind of, scary. But that is one of the terror I have about what spirit life is about, that you're going to be dragged into hell because you're a bad person and you're going to be tortured and all of that. Virginia.
The first thing that came up for me right away was that suffering in this life will be rewarded in the next.
Right. Yeah.
Which
yeah,
not necessarily true.
Yes. It's like, well, it's kind of interesting. One is that if you endure hardships done by others, but you don't react yourself, you try to, as much as you can, to endure, which is what we do as children, then I do feel like there is a kind of a compensation for it, or, some kind of a making up for it must happen. But on the other hand, I feel like it's twisted by people saying, if you suffer the meeting of my addictions, if you suffer my bad treatment of you and put up with it, it's a big thing in my culture. When you put up with bad treatments, when you accept addictions, when you accept abuse, that's you doing the good suffering and you'll get rewarded later. So it's kind of like you have to make a distinction of like, because in my culture, basically, Indian women get a badge of honor for really enduring abuse and not standing up to it and not saying no and not getting out of it. That is the suffering that you will be rewarded for. And then there are a lot of people who are then bitter, going, well, what happened to that? Turns out you were breaking God's laws because you were enabling abuse, or you didn't stand up for it, or you didn't have love of self to, change the situation, and on and on and on. So it's kind of a tricky one, right? Like it can be twisted by people who use it as justification for why you should put up with them.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Others? Alicia?
Well, I didn't have any religious teaching at all. I wasn't
Okay.
with anything. So, but the feeling that I have when I'm reflecting back on it is almost as if there's just this life and that's it.
Yeah.
And
what does that bring up?
Yeah, well, I have a feeling of also that I don't deserve to be happy, and because I'm not conforming, and therefore you're just doomed to fail, and you've got no worth in this life, and there isn't another life, so you're just doomed to fail. That was what came up for me when I read this.
See,
basically.
okay, that's a good one. I mean, I would feel like there's nothing besides this life.
Yeah,
I would feel like that's terror.
Yeah, and because you're not conforming in this life, you haven't got a chance.
Yeah, exactly. So I can just feel the terror that comes up with that. Good one. Thank you. And boy, is a land of surprises for you then, Alicia. Everything will be a surprise. Michaela?
With this question, I reflected on when I was about 9 or 10. I went through this period of doing Ouija boards and really opening into connection with the spirit world. And I remember the way that I was dealt with, and the way that I look back on myself as well is with this shame and this, that it's mystery as well, and it can't be known, and that it's evil, like never really knowing the other side of it.
Yeah.
Just not evil, dark side of it, which is what's so sort of in all the movies and stuff, is the darkness of the spirit world. And I feel as well this connection, because I've just finished reading this book that sort of jumped off the shelf at me, that was about witches, and connecting to that judgment that is on intuition and spirituality and feeling and stuff. And so there's such this heavy suppression on top of these intuitive connections that we are capable of making.
So you have feelings of shame. There's something evil and dark about the spirit world, and you're not supposed to want to know. And it's unknowable, and it's mysterious, and you'll never know.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to feel about right there. Thank you. Others? Michael.
One for me is that I can create my heaven, through the power of my mind. I create my future in a direct way. I mean, I do either any way I do it, I'm creating my future, but I get what I want. So
that's right.
But life has been a process of learning you don't get what you want.
Well, you are going to get what you are, and
yeah, that's better said.
Than what you wish you were. You don't get the facade version, you get the real version. But yeah, that is a new age thinking, isn't it? Like this fantastic thing of you creating this beautiful, fantastic thing after. It's up to you. You can create whatever you want. And yeah, it's kind of a new age belief for sure. Thank you.
And everybody can have their own truth. All these truths can continue to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Even the ones that aren't in harmony with God.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Others? Okay, well, so we will do the question. The question we want to ask Afrar today. So the way is we'll ask the question. Maybe I'll type it in the chat. Is we're asking Afrar the question: how did you develop and maintain your faith considering your life circumstance? I have no idea where my spelling is gone. Okay, so how did you develop and maintain your faith considering how your life was? So I'll pause the recording, ask the question, receive the answers, and then we'll come back and continue. Okay. Before we start, just want to bring up that the energy feels a little bit down in the group. So I'm just wondering if maybe we're kind of comparing ourselves to Afrar and kind of judging ourselves a little bit about how he had all these qualities that we're judging ourselves for not having, or whatever it is. It's like, I think we're probably comparing ourselves in a bad way. So just see if you can maybe choose to see how you already have some of the qualities that he's talking about, and that, keep give yourself a pat on the shoulder there, that you do have qualities, and you just know that those qualities really work. Empathy works, curiosity works, self-reflection works. He had qualities that are just common sense qualities. We all have them. And you just pick the few that you already have and just keep your focus. Like, it's more like saying, those qualities, they work. look where that took him. That can happen for you. That can happen for me. So curiosity, empathy, common sense, questioning everything, seeking truth, making God be your teacher. Like, we're here. This is exactly what we're trying to do. So we really have all these qualities that he had. And look how far it took him when he kind of focused on those qualities and developed them and took chances and took risks. And yeah, we've all got them. There wasn't anything there that was too unusual. Yeah. And he was sad and he was depressed and he was lonely and, it was a tough life. But yet those qualities were there and look how far it took him. So look what he can do for us. All right. So I don't know if I got how accurate my receiving the answers today, but that's okay. We are trying things out. We're experimenting. So let's see what kind of answers we got. Who wants to go first? Alicia.
So usually I try and write, but I can never read my writing. So I tried typing.
Okay.
So I don't know how intellectual this is. And also it's a bit long-winded. But anyway, this is what I got. I'll just read it. In some ways, my life circumstances were actually a gift to acquire greater faith in God, and all that I appeared to attract, whether seemingly good or bad, helped me discern between what the multitude considered to be right and what God had absolutely put into play for the greater justice of all, eventually. On outer appearance, this did not seem so, and certainly there were times when I was lost in a confused state and even in deep depressive moods to the extent that I wanted to give up. But there always seemed to be a nudge in some form or another which gently directed me upward. I now know this to be such beautiful friends from this present world I reside within.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. Judith.
I almost want Lisa to email me what she wrote. It was kind of so interesting. But I was thinking about him as a child.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I felt that it was, he saw beauty in nature. Anytime he saw the beauty in nature, it would amaze him. The fact that he came across, he discovered ideas that were completely unknown to him.
Mm-hmm.
Through the reading, it amazed him. It made him curious. He wanted to question more. It was like a rain or a sunlight falling into his mind, filling it with knowledge.
Wow.
So he got so much joy. I can't read my writing here. Childlike, just like this unvarnished and childlike energy for just discovering anything that was new, and everything he seemed to find he felt was so beautiful.
Wow.
And I felt that's what made him, despite the downside, inspire him. And it's interesting because the last class I had with you when we did the last book, and we asked Alpha a question about ourselves, and I felt him. I felt like myself as a youngster in my parents' backyard, just like being so curious about what is out there.
Yeah.
And so this kind of inspired me again in that. Just be curious and just notice the beauty.
The childlike.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Selena?
Yeah, mine was pretty simple. The only love he ever felt was God's love, which we often all do feel as children when we're in a pure state, maybe even like as Judith says, when he was in nature. So he received God's love, but it was the only love that he ever felt. And he really loved that feeling was precious to him.
The contrast is so obvious.
And so he aligned everything that came up in his life, every question, with that feeling. If that feeling wasn't there with that question, he knew it wasn't truth.
Wow. Dang.
Because
I want a piece of that.
Well, because we all, when we received love from God as a child, it gets all muddied up with approval from our parents, but he wasn't getting any of that anyway. So it wasn't muddied by that confusion of what love is, what you're supposed to do to get it and all that. He just got it. And then he just, like, if this question isn't, if I think of that and think of that thing, and I don't get that feeling that I feel from God, then that's not a true thing.
Wow.
Really kind of simple.
That is.
It's a simple emotional
Beautiful.
way of processing what's truth and what isn't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Others who wants to share? Michaela?
Similar to what Selena said, like he sort of was saying to me and to others in this group, we're starting to realize that when you have curiosity and you follow the thread, you get answers and you see change and your heart opens. And so it just expands from there. And he was lucky enough that he had the space to follow the thread as a child. And that just meant that he was never going to stop.
Yeah. So curiosity, That's okay. Thank you. Virginia, do you want to share? Yeah, go ahead.
Mine was very simple, so I kind of questioned if I was getting anything, but it was the listening to his conscience is what I guess, because that's my understanding. That's why given that, and sort of like Selena says, and I said, so okay, listening to your conscience, but that when he followed it, then he received those good feelings, and it led to good, which helped to continue to keep building the faith and that love and trust in God's goodness. And so I'm just getting shivers, like it's just, and I'm thinking, wow, that's so simple. Just listen. Conscience, listen to my conscience and follow it and trust it. And
Wow. Thank you.
It doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah.
Judith?
Yeah, to just go on that, I felt that he was like, he felt he could be himself. He wasn't trying to be somebody else. He wasn't behaving differently than these people.
So no facades.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Michael, do you want to go?
I wrote, I think I looked at him as an older person, but it has pieces of everything that you've said. I wrote that he tested God, and that's not really the right way, but he had his conscience and he wanted to know what was true, and he didn't like deceit and hypocrisy, but he sought, he was sensitive to God's principles, and then he acted on them. And he was sensitive to see how they turned out. He was discerning. And so he got this feedback, this feeling of feedback and support from God. And he felt he had some kind of relationship with God that he doesn't really say much about. God is like a presence and a friend. And even when he makes mistakes, he was open to learn about it. He was open to his own errors, and he didn't, beat himself up. So it was like an experiment. But I don't think it was all that conscious. I think he was continually recalibrating himself to do what he felt pleased God. That he felt in his soul.
And that's the way of testing. Like you got to test all relationships, and that's by testing, then you develop like, okay, I can trust this one. I can trust this. I have a very young, awakening in me, going, I like this God. I kind of like him. It's like, oh, that's a very different team awakening in me, that I kind of like him. He forgives. He loves me. I really know that. He's forgiven me. Oh, so relief for that. Like, what a gift that is. I really like this guy. So you kind of like, slowly, you know, when you're developing a relationship, you got to get to know them, and then you got to decide what you like, do if you like them. And if you like them, then eventually it may turn into love. It may turn into obedience way down the road. Somebody with my nature, obedience is going to come a long time down the road. But yeah, a test. Go ahead.
I think I'm starting from a place of mistrusting God.
Yeah,
you know,
me too.
and it just feels like Ephraim Frederick kind of trusted God.
Yeah. We got to work through those emotions. It's taken me decades to release emotions towards God, emotion of blame and abandonment, and like, you know, you got what you got. Whatever you got in your soul, it's yours. You got to go through it. So if that's where you got to start, you got to start. At least those emotions are released now, and there's room for me to develop something else, which is testing God and deciding how I like my experiences about God now, which is slowly changing. You got what you got. Like, come on. It is not fair, but you got the emotions you got in your soul. There's volumes of, you know, substances that is now in your soul. You gotta have to plug them in and release them. Not fair. And I'm done being mad about not fair. Like, fine, whatever. Moving on. I was mad about not fair for a long time. I'm just tired of it now. It's good. Okay, thank you. Anyone left? I don't see Julius. Michaela, you go already, right? No, oh, go ahead, Michaela. Do you want to go? No? Okay. So I got an interesting answer. My answer was my mother's prayers. My mother's prayers for me to develop and continue seeking God. So his mother's prayers. And also my yearning for my mother. So he had this intense yearning for his mother that then kept him open to his mother's prayers for him. He said, that's the answer I got. So we'll just go with it. I kind of feel like that's kind of accurate. And depending on based on the issues I'm working through right now, it's giving me faith that a mother's prayer can do a lot. So that's actually giving me hope in my situation. So, okay, well, that was chapter 1, Off to the Races, and we'll continue going on with the rest of the chapters.